Hello everybody, welcome to part 2 of the complete Christian iceberg. Before we begin, here's some corrections of slip-ups I made in the last video. In the part where I'm talking about Chris's imaginary twin sister Crystal, I used this image to refer to her, but in reality, it's actually a card of Megan which further destroyed the already dying friendship. The angry medallion I showed while talking about unique medallions isn't the original one, it's a replica. The original one is far messier and crude. When talking about Chris's Captain's Log intros, it is possible he may have also stolen the concept from a Family Guy parody of Star Trek. She Came for Quick was later confirmed to indeed be of Megan and not of her sister. I'm pretty sure this is the mugshot I forgot to put, in which the comment is referencing. If you may have heard mythical instead of medical when I was talking about Chris's heterochromia, that wasn't a slip-up, it was just my severe dyslexia. And with all of those corrections out of the way, let's get into the iceberg, and remember to subscribe if you enjoy. Dating profiles. Chris has created a number of profiles for dating websites over the years. Like everything else Chris does, his endeavors are usually made of pure fail. Chris has signed up to a total of 6 dating websites, which are Match.com, OkCupid, Book of Matches, The Hook Cafe, and eHarmony. The most important of these is Book of Matches because it's the one we have the most information about Chris's dating life. Now it's unclear when Chris made his Match.com profile, but given his stated age, it was probably made around late 2008 or early 2009, around the same time as his first The Hook Cafe advertisement. While the staples of half-assery are still present, it's clear Chris spent more time on this page than he did on his OkCupid profile. Many of the statements here are just repetitions of the Christian facts we all know and love. His fantasy of a daughter named Crystal, McDonald's as a first date, and so on and so forth. True and honest perhaps, but hardly a way to impress babes. Chris also seems to believe that citing Mary Poppins as the greatest movie ever will somehow have a positive effect on the ladies. If you like me, find me in person and let me know. Charlottesville, Virginia. Response rate 0%. Above average. Sensually hot. Possess. Caucasian. Male. 26 years of age. 5'9" to 5'10". Single. Artsy gamer. Here for the long-term relationship. Things that have bothered me. When they are false friends, when they would just dump me after one mistake or something as dumb. I am looking for, in a nutshell, an 18-year-old to my current age, caring, smoke-free, non-alcoholic, white and boyfriend-free. Cool movies. Of all time, Mary Poppins. My favorite groups are all kinds. Classic, jazz, country, pop, rock, etc. I'm looking for a personality like, I'm not certain, but as long as the woman likes me for me and will stay by and care about me, all things considered, I'll feel better. I feel that I'm a good listener and I can make her laugh and or feel good. But then again, it depends on her point of view. Willingness to meet others from Book of Matches. I'm willing to meet women from this service as long as they live within the Rockesville or Charlottesville, Virginia area. And if they currently do not have or preferably never had a boyfriend. Are you ready to start from scratch? I want to start a relationship from the ground up. I may have a few things already put behind me, but I'll make it a point to keep those issues out of the way of current or future issues. I am to be continued. My typical day. Personally, I've never been on a date before in my life, but for my first date, I'd keep it simple with a beverage or shared meal at McDonald's or a similar restaurant. My wish list includes a dream of getting married and having a daughter named Crystal. The goatee. This entry most likely refers to the video The Goatee Will Grow Back, which Chris uploaded to YouTube on the 31st of July 2009. In it, Chris goes back to his old self after concerns regarding him being a stripeless, medallionless, goatee-sporting imposter by violently failing at shaving while Christian pop rock blares in the background for emotional effect. If Chris were smart and knew how to shave properly, he would have used shaving cream, or at least some olive oil, soap, a mirror, and water, or at least buy an electric razor. But because he's Chris, he instead chose a method that probably gave him at least 2 weeks worth of razor burn. That he isn't all bleeding from the aggressive dry shaving he does probably attests to how greasy his skin is. Chris did regrow the goatee for a time late in the year, but not for long, as it wasn't styled quite the same way. As of 2023, the goatee hasn't grown back, and following Chris's transgender lifestyle change, it probably never will. Christian vs. the Internet. Christian vs. the Internet is a cancelled and presumably lost documentary film directed by a film student, Joseph Draft. which would have focused on the current condition of Chris and the long-term effects that internet trolling has had on his mental state. The trailer and leaked minute from the opening are the only known surviving portions of the film, and as of November 2020, the film remains in limbo, if not outright lost. According to Null, the mostly completed film was later destroyed by Draft out of stress over film cuts and infighting with some of his collaborators. Null also claimed that Draft face doxed himself after a 4-hour conversation once the drive was completely destroyed. When first announced, the documentary generated significant criticism from Kiwi Farms due to its announcement being through Kickstarter page via a tweet from Chris and having a funding goal of total $2,000, which Kiwi Farms members argued as being too high considering the film was stated as being completed. The description on the Kickstarter page initially had very little information on the documentary and no breakdown of how the $20,000 of budget would be used, which led to much speculation on how the money would be spent and how much may be for profit. The page was eventually updated and described that the film had been completed to a certain point, included a new interview with Barb and Chris, new interviews with Megan Schroeder, and that the purpose of the Kickstarter was to conduct additional interviews with the Chandlers and also various YouTubers who discussed Chris, such as Gino Samuel and Sakamo. Kiwi Farms user CMCW posted in a thread about the project, claiming to be involved with it and wanting to do a Q&A. However, despite CMCW answering several questions, several Kiwi Farms members remained hostile towards the project and its creators. The Kickstarter for the film was abruptly cancelled on the 6th of April 2019, only 2 days after its announcement. According to Gino Samuel, Megan actually wanted to reunite with Chris in person. However, Draft vetoed this, feeling it would be too corny and forced. According to Null, eventually, Megan changed her mind on being included in the film and requested her inclusion to be completely cut. Null also claimed that the stress over the matters led Draft to give up on the project, and eventually destroyed a hard drive containing the only known copy of the film. Draft also feared that the hostility surrounding the film would also lead to him getting doxxed, so he did the job himself. According to Gino, Joe's buddy who saw the footage said that they got lots of footage of Chris belching and screaming in public and was all giddy about it. As of June 2023, the film has yet to surface online, so it can be presumed that if it isn't sitting in a cloud storage or on a hard drive somewhere, then the unused footage has been lost entirely. Jessica Quinn. Jessica Quinn was a white knight turned troll who played the role of being Chris's sweetheart from the 7th of September 2017 until the 5th of October. The pair experienced a brief breakup on the 26th of September after Chris used the sock puppet account to follow a woman who had blocked him on Twitter. Subsequently, she broke up with Chris a second time on the 5th of October after claiming that Chris, having collaborated with Kiwi Farms to make a Q&A video, had caused her Facebook account to be hacked by trolls. She had been friends with Chris on Facebook since 2015 until the second breakup. Afterwards, she tried to get back on his good side in an apparent attempt to troll him again, but was thwarted by the idea guys who, in the midst of wreaking their own havoc on Chris's psyche at the time, and drove a wedge between her and Chris. Sonic Boom Saga. Towards late 2014, while everyone else was posting on Facebook about less important political concerns, Chris decided that the most important cause of the time was protesting Sega's decision to make Sonic's arms blue as opposed to the usual tan color in Sonic Boom, their latest non-canon game in the series. Chris was so passionate about this supposed defamation of his favorite video game character that he went so far as to write incoherent rambling letters to Sega, throw tantrums about it on Facebook, threaten the lives of Sega employees, glitter bomb Sega's American HQ, and even physically assault retail staff. His angry, incoherent letters to Sega clearly show that Chris's prolonged estrangement from reality could reach new heights, and that the concepts such as civility, moderation, and channeling anger in any way that doesn't involve ranting like a child, throwing a tantrum, are by now completely alien concepts to him, or at least go out the window whenever he's annoyed. Unfortunately, unlike previous bouts of anger where Chris would film himself or take to social media to rage at his target, in this instance he decided to take a hands-on approach to it by vandalizing copies of Sonic Boom wherever he saw them. When GameStop employees rightfully tried to make him leave the store, he agreed to walk out, but only after brandishing his can of mace and spraying it at one poor employee's shirt. At first, it was unclear whether Chris would boycott Sonic Boom or just buy the games and watch the show show like the consumer's lemming he is. Given his irrational hatred and acts of vandalism towards otherwise available games, the former seemed the more likely. On the 13th of January 2015, it was revealed that he owned copies of the games. Chris said that they were sent to him by Catherine. Why Chris has such a bizarre distaste for such a minor insignificant detail in the first place is still up for speculation. It could simply be some overly attached nostalgia to the original Sonic the Hedgehog, or possibly some inner venting for his own failed franchise that he determined to get into Super Smash Bros. For Wii and the Nintendo 3DS. The end of the saga is marked by this victory post Chris posted on the 2nd of October 2015. This is the final update for this protest group. Regardless of circumstances and bad outcomes, it is confirmed that Sonic's arms will be back to their original color in the next Sonic game, Sonic and Mario at the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. After this visual confirmation, I have found solace and satisfaction from the ending result. I wish to thank every person who actually helped in the protest against the blue arms in the Sonic Boom games, cartoons and all of that. We have found success in our protest. It is good. Jacob Suckness. Jacob Suckness is a mentally disabled amateur sorcerer and conspiracy theorist from San Francisco who attempted to manipulate Chris into a relationship, notably by exploiting his fantasy world and tricking Chris into believing his imaginary friend approved of the idea. Prior to Suckness's interaction, the idea guys had brainwashed Chris into identifying as bisexual, which enabled Suckness to try to become Chris's first real-world male sweetheart, which ultimately failed. Suckness emerged in mid-2018 and was most active between July and November of 2019. He has the dubious honor of embodying every single aspect of the unholy tetrad over the course of his years of interacting with Chris. He has similarities with Chris, such as being autistic, non-gender conforming, receiving a monthly tugboat, believing to be a god, thinks he has magic powers, and has built an elaborate fantasy universe into which he has appropriated Sonic 2 characters with over a dozen installments that he believes really exist. While he was at first seemingly just another troll, notable for his erotic disposition towards Chris, Suckness became openly malicious after establishing direct contact with Chris. In mid-2019, Suckness gained influence over Chris by offering to work together financially following Chris's June 2019 ban from eBay. He then achieved considerable influence over Chris's fantasy world as seen in Sonic 14. Most of his courting and enabling has been through Twitter, though he has also promoted himself through Reddit, YouTube and even Kiwi Farms. For months, Suckness tried to manipulate Chris into meeting in person to unlock his alarm. Yet when Suckness finally set out to travel cross-country to 14 Branchland Court in late September 2019, Chris rebuffed these efforts with the help of the Watchmen. Rehabilitation attempts over the following 2 months, at one point going even as far as to manipulate Chris into mutual flirting, could not ultimately repair the broken relationship, and by the end of November 2019, they rejected each other again. Suckness was nevertheless persistent and by March 2020 briefly had a toe in Chris's door once again. Chris and Jacob's relationship came to a permanent end in August 2020 after Jacob claimed that Mia Hamm had a child with Chris. Asper. Asper is the main character of the Asper comics written by Alec Benson Leary. The comics and its cast of characters are an Aspergian satire of Chris's comics and characters. From the designs to the magnificent dialogue, everything is intentionally made to ridicule and make fun of Chris. It's no secret that Chris hates Asperger's syndrome and presumably everybody that suffers from it, due to some illusory sense of competition between Asperger's and other disorders on the autism spectrum. The knowledge that someone had created a series about an electric hedgehog Pokemon who suffers from the affliction did not sit well with him. He became even angrier when the creator of the series himself started sending him emails. The first recorded communication we have between Alec and Chris implies that Alec had been in contact with him multiple times outside of the public view and that Chris had responded to these communications negatively. Chris did not respond any better on his public mailbag, claiming that Alec was just jealous of him and inexplicably alleging that the included fan art of Asper and Sonic implied homosexuality. Upset that Chris would jump to such conclusions, Alex sent him another letter depicting Sonic and Asper having a good, masculine, straight fun. This letter was even more poorly received. Undaunted, Alex continued to send letters to Chris's mailbag, thinking that perhaps the man he respected so much really just misunderstood him. A few of these letters were ignored, some were coldly dismissed, but Chris's most notable responses were explosive outbursts of anger and hatred. Eventually, Chris began refusing to respond to Alec's correspondence or outright deleting his messages. In Asper 2 Issue C, Chris made an appearance asking for help from the characters to save Asper 2. Later, he and Liquid met up with each other, leading to a standoff where Chris tried to shoot him. Chris responded to the comic, mentioning that he was set on fire in the comic. He didn't seem to notice that he was also called by the name Ian Brandon Anderson, nor did he notice the appearance of Liquid Chris. When the Asper 2 saga started taking off, Chris's schedule for his own comics dropped drastically. Beyond this, Chris made clear that he also hates the comic because of its uncensored pictures and low-resolution, blocky art. Here we see Chris's hypocrisy in action. The uncensored pictures he's all up in arms over are just minor posters hung up mostly in Asper 2's room, and even so, they're mostly hidden away by the characters' heads. Chris's uncensored pictures are done by the main character in full view, despite the fact that Sonnet is supposed to be a kid's comic. Chris probably took the terms blocky and low resolution from the Family Guy episode Road to the Multiverse. Of course, compared to Chris's art, it's practically the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. It helps that Alec is humble and doesn't try to act like his artwork is amazing and worthy of being hung in a museum. Isabella Loretta Janke. Isabella, or Bella Loretta Janke, also known as Kelly Osbourne and dozens of other pseudonyms, is known for participation in the leaked July 2021 incest call, in which Chris reveals that he had been having an incestuous relationship with his mother. A foot fungus-ridden, currently suspended student at Texas Tech University, Bella's sordid internet activities included being the leader of the chain of Discord servers, the TTU Chess Club, from which she and her friends made many sociopathic, edgy and off-color remarks, including encouraging people to verbally harass other students. In the fall of 2020, Bella was hired by the Praetor Group to create an animation for Chris, at which point the two of them met. She and Chris kept in contact afterwards. According to The Fool, Chris had also given Bella access to the Watchmen server, the Knights of Quinn, on the 19th of July 2021. Naught and the WCT had practiced conflicting means of preventing Chris from continuing interaction with her. The WCT had claimed to have acted friendly around Bella in many circumstances to keep a short leash on her, while Naught had actively tried to push away from Chris and continued attacks towards Praetor members. Both of these had made Bella act defensively when the WCT had tried interacting with her, though she was also able to help the WCT dox one of Naught's family members. While Bella was friendly towards Chris in conversations, behind his back she A-logged him on Kiwi Farms, saying that she tried to tell the trolls to get him to cut his cock off and that Chris should have died in some freak gender reassignment surgery accident by now. And the private chess club server, in which Alan and Bella had made what Alan later claimed to be an edgy, sarcastic joke about a plan to get Chris to off himself. Bella's comments led to much speculation and rumors, though no proof has been found that Bella had been serious with her A-logging remarks. Bella was also one of the several people who spread rumors about Praetors following the leak of a chunk of the taser call, claiming that she was trying to convince them to harm Chris. In July 2021, Chris began telling selected trusted individuals, Bella, the WCT, Null, Don Lashbaum, Spunky, and his physician, that he had begun having certain relations with an older woman. At the time, Chris was using euphemisms such as lady friend to mislead them and disguise the true nature of his actions. On either the evening of the 27th or the early morning of the 28th of July 2021, Chris trusted Bella to such a degree that he decided to reveal that his partner, which was his own mother during a video call conversation with her. Bella recorded the admission and shared it with the Chess Club Discord server and the Sutress. Chris also sent incest texts describing the incest further. Bella planned on how to release the information publicly, wanting to gather evidence and get more information from Chris from another angle to preserve anonymity. The Sutress then shared audio from the call with the Christian Conservation Collective Discord server. On the night of the 29th of July, the first of multiple leaks of the audio from the call were leaked on YouTube and Reddit by Christian Conservation Collective server member El Dude Rocks, followed by the text being leaked to Reddit by the Sutress, longer though non-essential cuts of the call released by Bella and her chess club friend over the next few days. Ultimately, Chris would be arrested and charged with incest after concerned viewers called the police for a welfare check after the initial 29th of July leaks. In Bella's attempt to preserve her own anonymity, she tried to claim that her friends were either behind the leak or the person behind the voice in the recording, a move which led to much backlash. She was also called into question by the WCT and other Knights members in a group chat, where she gives them a set of fabricated texts where Chris allegedly performed BDSM-style acts on Barb, which the WCT had shared onto Kiwi Farms along with a video clip of the sutress Bella had given him when she told she was the primary source of the texts. In the wake of the incest's cold release, Bella was doxxed by the Kiwi Farms. Out of a combination of her Alog comments and self-proclaimed plots towards Chris, her edgy behavior, drama over the revelation of Chris having relations with his mother, and general confusion as logs of Bella chats were leaked, speculation and gossip on Bella's involvement with Chris ran rampant, with many unproven rumors being repeated as fact. During his stay in jail, Chris has come to view Bella as an enemy alongside Null and Jacob Suckness, claiming without proof in many jail letters that he foresaw several of her claimed plots, and that Bella had faked many of the details that were revealed in the incest call. For Julie's eyes only, on the 20th of February 2009, the first of several tapes which involved Christian West and Chandler will leak onto the internet, provided of course that you count Chris humping a blow-up doll until he reaches a climax as a sex tape. The video file for Julie's Eyes Only .mp4 consists of nearly 8 minutes of Chris completely nude except for his socks, making love to Kimmy, the blow-up doll, in a demonstration to how he'd get intimate with his then sweetheart Julie. Throughout the video, Chris calls Julie's name out, eventually culminating in yelling Julie when he's close to blowing his load. While the title suggests that the video was meant solely for Julie, or rather the 13-year-old kid pretending to be a woman, the sex tape was soon uploaded to Slutload, where it has received over 3.2 million views. It is perhaps the most viewed video of Chris outside of YouTube, as indicated by the continued permutations of the Julie meme that even Chris is sick of hearing. Bent duck. Duck is a quickism for penis, usually in the context of Chris's own penis. The genitalia of other males and those of roast chews are called pickles. This neologism was originally thought to be a misspelling of dick, but Chris confirmed in the 17th of February 2009 Mumble chat it is an intentional euphemism. Chris's duck is known for being bent at an angle and further abused by him with hygiene issues, with Chris's hormone replacement therapy further altering the duck. Coincidentally, real-life ducks are known for their horrifying twisted penises. Doopy Do-Over. Doopy Do-Over, or Doopy, is a successor of Megan Schroeder and the Wallflower. She's a voice actress / animator for the Planet Dolan YouTube channels. Like many artists on the internet, she also allowed customers to commission her to produce drawings and artworks for money. Chris appears to consider her to be a gal pal, whereas she thought of him simply as another customer. In August 2017, she blocked him after receiving negative attention from Weens and getting creeped out by Chris's messages towards her. Alog. Alogging, named after noted Christian critic Anthony Alog Logado, is a term used to describe the act of overplaying or exaggerating the negative traits of someone lulzy at irrational levels. This often, but not always, includes expressing disproportionate levels of hatred for someone and or wishing physical harm on them, usually for perceived crimes that they are guilty of. Alogging also typically involves comparing oneself to someone noticeably lulzy or dysfunctional and claiming that they're not as incompetent as said lulzy person. People who are suspected of doing these are often referred to as Alogs or A-loggers, and are considered at the other end of the spectrum from White Knights. Where White Knights try to defend Chris from trolls and help him to improve his situation, A-logs hold the belief that Chris is deserving of whatever scorn and harm he is subjected to. While once fashionable, especially when Chris was relatively new to the internet, A-logging has become associated with people trying to troll shield themselves, like the original A-log and therefore is looked down by Christorians. The shocking revelations that came to light during the incest saga have seen A-logging come back into a fashion to some degree, though actively wishing death or physical harm on Chris is still considered by some to be crossing the line. Instagram account. Chris's account was first made in 2018 under the name Christine Weston Chandler, and since has gained over 2,000 followers. However, he didn't start posting until early 2021. It's unclear whether or not there were posts before then or not, possibly some lost to time. However, most of Chris's posts consist of things related to magical thinking and Pokemon, along with his daily life as well. Some of Chris's most notable posts are about magic, including things about crystals and chakra tea. Other than those posts, Chris mainly posts Pokemon cards he makes, but the majority of his Instagram posts are exactly that. Jacqueline Jackie Romy is a boyfriend-free troll whom Chris met on the Hook Cafe. She became his sweetheart from April to October 2010, and Chris made her many videos. According to one of Chris's leaked Facebook statuses in February 2012, he had resumed contact with her, before blocking her that April after several private videos Chris made for her were leaked onto the internet. However, in May, he refriended her on Facebook. Goes down salty. On the 12th of June 2009, Chris visited a local bar-restaurant where he encountered Kim Wilson and another guy who recorded and uploaded clips of their night spent with Chris on YouTube. The event has been referred to as Chris's big night out. In the first video, Chris broke his 27-year period of abstaining from alcohol and had a sip of Long Island iced tea. Chris's choice isn't recommended for novice drinkers because it contains vodka, triple sec, rum, tequila and gin, plus lemon juice, simply syrup and coke, making it a rather strong cocktail to start off. Chris probably chose it because he assumed, due to its name, that it was literally just an iced tea. Note that when he swallows a drink, he performs the same reaction as when he recycled his navy and says the infamous phrase,
"Goes down salty."
Internet Lumberjack. Internet Lumberjack is the name trolls gave Bob Chandler after the Bob Walks In incident, which is a conversation that took place on the 14th of February 2009 between Chris and Julie, shortly after a cybersex session, which was cut down by the Internet Lumberjack. Here's a fragment of the mythical call.
Get away from that TV.
Fine.
Get away from the internet. I'm cutting it down right now.
No! Dad, no!
Yes.
No!
What are you doing?
Null. Joshua Connor Moon, better known by his online alias, Null, is a current owner of the Kiwi Farms, formerly known as the Quickie Forums. He was a former advisor for Chris, though he initially led the forum as a way of monitoring and documenting Chris's shenanigans. Over time, he shifted focus away from Chris after his father died. From there, he occasionally contacted Chris when it was determined that Chris needed help, like after the 2014 house fire, or during the saga of the self-inflicted taint wound. During the spring of 2018, Null began acting as one of Chris's volunteer advisors, alongside fellow guard dogs, the captain and Marvin, helping him filter his email messages to weed out weird messages from legitimate business dealings, as well as offering advice, such as warning Chris not to invade people's personal space at other conventions after Chris's behavior had gotten him kicked out of too many games. He felt motivated to assist Chris after learning that the idea guys had scammed Chris out of enough money to put him at risk of losing his home. Null's participation dwindled for a while, but Chris reconciled with him in early 2021. Null positioned himself to be something of a caretaker for Chris, being one of the few people that he would listen to, organizing travel plans for him to safely get to conventions, while also getting him in the habit of completing commission work to fund those travel plans. He stated that when Barbara dies, he had plans to try to get Chris into assisted living. Of course, things did not work out that way. In the wake of the July 2021 incest allegations against Chris, Null had a conversation with Chris, in which he found out that Chris had lied about his financial situation and that Chris had taken money from Barbara's bank account in a potential violation of his EPO. Following the conversation, Null cut ties with Chris, while Chris felt betrayed that the information about his incestuous acts came to light. Chris now sees Null as a Judas Iscariot-like figure once his messiah complex reached new heights, since he now believes himself to be Jesus Christ reincarnated. Sonichu 17. Sonichu 17 is an unreleased issue of the Sonichu comic series. To date, only the cover has been released. The cover art date suggests the book was conceptualized during the Idea Guy saga, and the cover artwork features the polyamorous marriage, which they brainwashed into Chris. In a chat with the Idea Guys, Chris said, "Sonichu insulted my chronicle laws I wrote last night and earlier today. I had written 15 unbreakable laws, and they're part of Sonichu 17. Badger-chan and I were going to time travel and make the past details right for our nation, in mutual decisions between the three of us. Due to Chris's recent legal troubles, it's pretty clear that this issue will not be completed anytime soon." The Anklet. The Anklet was what Chris called a small piercing on his taint, what's known as a guiche piercing among body modification enthusiasts. He had apparently gotten it as a fair substitute for a clitoris. indicating that Chris believes the clitoris is located in a woman's perineum. It seems that Chris's knowledge of female anatomy wasn't noticeably improved by his encounter with Mia Hamm. The taint is actually one of the most neglected parts of the body, and the most dirty since it's neighbor to the anus. Since Chris rarely bathes himself, getting a taint piercing was a disaster waiting to happen. After a couple weeks, the piercing began to migrate out of Chris's body in a process referred to as rejection. Instead of letting the area heal before a second attempt, Chris immediately tried to re-pierce it with a safety pin. This rather predictably resulted in the migration worsening, and even after going to professionals and having it redone again, his body still rejected it, and Katie eventually convinced Chris to give up on the piercing altogether. Factoring 2 professional piercings and 2 items of jewelry, Chris wasted a grand total of about $200 of his monthly tugboat on this. Surfshack Tito. Surfshack Tito was a mysterious troll who first emerged in early March 2010. His arrival was reminiscent of the rise of Jack Thaddeus in the summer of 2009. Like Jack, he first made his mark by hacking Chris's PlayStation Network account. The nickname Surfshack Tito is a reference to a corpulent surf shop owner for the Nickelodeon kids cartoon Rocket Power. During the exchanges with Chris, most of them from Tito ended with a Tito-styled word of wisdom. An infamous copy-paste about Tito most likely inspired the choice to go with the name. Based on Chris's insults towards Tito in the emails and videos, it was assumed that Chris believed the actual Tito from Rocket Power was trolling him. However, the truth is that the image attached to an email shows a Photoshop image of the Wallflower standing next to a really tall dark guy. Yep, I'm on TV DVD. Christian Weston Chandler, Yep, I'm on TV DVD, is Chris's 2007 homemade DVD featuring various clips Chris had made before his internet fame, and his actual, if meager, TV appearances. Despite its title, only 2 short clips of the DVD were ever shown on TV. Chris originally sent copies of the DVD only to a select few people, but nevertheless, through him making the DVD was an important enough achievement to mention repeatedly in the Sonic 2 comics and elsewhere. He also believed that people would actually be interested in buying a copy along with other merchandise, and even planned a Blu-ray release. Suffice to say, the disc was burned with a cheap Magnavox DVD recorder out of material that appears to have been poorly transferred off aged VHS tapes, and even if it actually had any interesting content that people would actually pay money for, it doesn't approach commercial quality. Chris probably thinks video quality that was abysmal to begin with will magically look better when burned in on a high-definition disc. Naturally, since this relic was so profoundly important in Chris's mind, the trolls had their curiosity piqued greatly over it. Eventually, a copy was obtained by Lord Silly Nipples by posing as Chris's childhood friend and crush, Tiffany Robinson. After the fire, it seems likely the original copy of the DVD was destroyed. However, Chris announced its first official public release in 2016, suggesting either the DVD survived the fire or he downloaded the torrent. Sonic Totem. The Sonic Totem is one of the relics of Phil, though more shrouded in mystery than any other. Created by Chris in middle school and made out of paper mache, it is one of the oldest known historical artifacts, as well as one of the oldest known artifacts to have survived the house fire. Originally, the totem was joined by an effigy in the form of a plate depicting Sonic. It is currently unknown if this has also survived. The totem has been featured very little in any of Chris's videos after the house fire in January 2015. Many assumed the totem had been destroyed, but it suddenly reappeared in full view during Chris's lesbian sleepover party announcement, and went on to make its most major appearance to date several years after the fire. As a result of the financial crisis, Chris sold the totem for a total of $1,500 on the 7th of April 2017. It now resides in the home of Ashura Glitch, an anon from 4chan's/VBoard. The Wallflower. The Wallflower is a codename of Megan Schroeder's Hi-Res, a female friend that Chris met sometime around early 2010. She is one of the few girls Chris has managed to associate with in his post-high school years, who is not, as far as can be seen, a direct result of trolling. In March 2010, she joined the long list of would-be sweethearts with whom Chris failed to lose his hated virginity to. The Wallflower wanted the relationship over after a troll linked the Wallflower to the Quickie. The ending of the relationship is most likely a result result of having her details leaked over the internet, and Chris exacerbated the problem. Nevertheless, Chris has taken it upon himself to blame those goddamn trolls for destroying yet another chance at getting some china. Father call. The father call is a phone call that occurred on the 4th of November 2009. In this call, Solid Chris spends 2 hours on the phone with Matthew Devoir, the father of his would-be sweetheart Casey, and retired United States Marine who served in the Gulf War. Chris uses the opportunity of speaking to the dad of his sweetheart by boasting of his now legendary honesty before flimsily attempting to defend himself from an angry father. Their conversation is illuminating. What follows is probably the bluntest personal assessment Chris has ever received to date. Matt berates Chris for his laziness, egotism, lack of empathy, inability to grow, unhealthy lifestyle, obesity, treatment of Casey, and general failure at life. To this day, Chris has never taken any of Matt and Casey's advice to heart. Throughout the call, he retorts by saying that he leads a hard life which includes such laborious tasks as doing menial chores, mowing the lawn, and cleaning the house. He also claims to be strong and that he exercises regularly, as well as eating healthy by going to McDonald's only once a week and shoving vegetables down his throat. After being berated with insults for 2 hours, or so he says, Chris became increasingly more stressed, frequently making insensitive statements towards Matthew. In general, Chris greatly offended Casey and her father, causing her to rethink her relationship and go back to Liquid Chris. Chris recorded his 5th of November video as a follow-up to their conversation, hoping to repair his relationship with Casey. He then had another phone conversation with Casey, which, to put it bluntly, ended quite poorly. Exiles. Chris has exiled himself from the internet a total of 2 times, the first of which was after Chris lost the Wallflower and fought with Surfshack Tito. An outside force attempted to push Chris away from the internet. No less than 5 times, Chris has boldly claimed that he has abandoned the internet and smugly told his detractors that they should go outside and live their lives, advice Chris should have followed years ago. However, Chris still latched onto the internet as much as he could, trying to find ways to sneak in without the force discovering him. Trolls would end up discovering Chris dancing like a dying turkey at Fridays after 5, then discover that he had set up shop at Flipnote Hatina, where he tried to spread his sick and twisted thoughts to younger, innocent people before being shut down several times. However, the thing that would finally bring Chris back to the internet and end his exile would be the destruction of his beloved life upgrade, at his own hands no less. And the second exile, unlike others, the second one came unannounced with the death of his father. Then came October 28th, a day which will live in infamy for Chris. After trespassing and running over Michael Snyder, he and Barb were arrested despite the help of Rob Bell. They were found guilty and were sentenced. Since that day, most, if not all of Chris's internet activity were confined to his Facebook account, though he would gripe about loneliness and nostalgia. It wasn't until 2013 where he uploaded a new video. Although January 2014 would bring him back to the spotlight briefly due to the house fire, it wasn't until the Sonic Boom saga where he would return to relevance. Christopher Weston Chandler. Chris credits his name change to Leonard Berenstein, an animatronic bear in a musical program presented at shopping malls and other venues. The Leonard character is designed to be fully interactive and engage in conversations with the audience via human operator behind the scenes. During a shopping trip to Richmond in late 1992, the Chandler family encountered the Berenstein show at the Regency Square shopping mall. Chris was evidently fascinated by the spectacle, and due to the light turnout that day, he received considerable attention from the interactive bear. The performer operating Leonard asked Chris his name and misheard Christopher as Christian. Chris and his family seem to attribute this error to Leonard's English accent, rather than the fact that the mumbling kid was slurring to a man over a microphone built into a robotic bear. For reasons only understood by him, Chris adopted the new name and insisted upon being called by it. Ryan Cash. Ryan Cash was the fictional brother of Clyde Cash, who offed himself when Chris announced there would be no comics released, withholding Sonic 7 in Protos of the Encyclopedia Dramatica page. He left the following note before offing himself. Dear family and friends, this is my final message to you. I'm going to off myself after my hero Christian Weston Chandler let me down. Sonic was my hero, and without any more comics, I will never be able to aspire to be just like him. I hate Christian for deciding to not make any more comics and being lazy. All he does is play a stupid video game and not care about anything but himself. He is such a jerk. Goodbye forever. I hope I see you in HE double hockey sticks. Chris. Ryan Cash. Clyde was absolutely heartbroken upon discovering his brother's cadaver and entered a state of depression. While Chris was upset by this news due to his naive understanding of the concept of death, his response to the news came across as condescending to grieving Clyde, who was upset that the video wasn't dedicated to his brother, but various new items that were seemingly of more importance to Chris. The final straw was when Chris made a thoughtless comment indicating that he enjoyed having enough influence over someone that they could make someone off themselves after he took a course of action. Following from Brian's death, Clyde's grief transformed into righteous indignation, and he sought to avenge his fallen brother by setting himself on a path to become Chris's arch-nemesis, even if he had to become a monster to do so. Clyde achieved notoriety for his various trolling plans against Chris. Well, we are officially halfway through the iceberg, so let me announce my sponsor, which is me, because I have no sponsor, so instead of hearing me babble on about Raid Shadow Legends, I'm just here to ask you to maybe press the subscribe button, and with that said, let's move on to the next entry. Billy Mays. Billy Mays is considered a key member of the Miscreants in spite of being relevant to Christory for a fairly limited amount of time, and he made his first appearance when he moderated the infamous #Sonichu IRC chat of January 20, 2009, which was attended by several trolls including Clyde Cash. Most infamously, Billy expressed disgust towards the revelation that Chris possessed lots of dirty crapped briefs and was incontinent before expressing total confoundment towards Chris for casually sharing that information with total strangers on the internet. Outside of actually attending these IRC chats, Billy became a key component of Blue Spike's most infamous act of trolling. Max told Chris that he would need to step down as mayor of Quickville and cede leadership to Billy, effective immediately, if he wanted to get his PlayStation Network account back. His first order of business was adult partying and promised that everyone will go home smoky. He stated that the roads will pour cheap beer and cartons of cigarettes, noting that the poor citizens of Quickville deserve a week of drunken stupor. During his short reign as mayor, Billy Mays instituted several groundbreaking reforms and was loved by all, with a record-breaking 99% approval rating. Sadly, Quickville's era of prosperity was quick to end after only a few months. On the 28th of June 2009, Billy Mays was found dead in his mansion. In Captain's Log Stardate, July 1st, 2009, Chris claimed he didn't kill Billy, but rather that Billy was a victim of a fatal heart attack, as officially reported by authorities. In his Rollin' and Trollin' video, Chris laments the death of his bodyguard, Billy Mays, and announces the near completion of the Billy Mays Tower, and he noted that the construction in Quickville was meant to serve as a memorial to one of Quickville's most beloved mayors. That a skyscraper could have been constructed so quickly after Billy Mays' death is suspicious, and many Quickville residents believe Chris arranged the building of the tower as a way to launder money stolen from his parents' credit cards, and that the naming of the tower is nothing more than a publicity stunt to leech off Billy Mays' popularity. Many years later, Chris would later criticize Billy Mays' stint as mayor, claiming that in the few short months he was mayor of Quickville, he was a major do-nothing and had nothing in his brain about politics. Maga-chan. This entry is most likely a misspelling of Magi-chan, whom is a Sonichu and a member of the Chaotic Combo. Like Chris's other lazy recallers, his name is a lame pun. According to Chris, his name is intended to play on the word magician. He's the serious know-it-all and the only character not solely motivated by finding a sweetheart. He's also one of the major sources of Deus Ex Machina, thus far for the character most often depicted as just a floating head providing walls of expository dialogue. He is purple but has been depicted as crimson. His design combines the standard Sonichu template with Mewtwo, who is incidentally Magi-chan's husband and father. He was probably the only sympathetic character in the whole series due to his sarcastic and often serious mood, unintentionally making him seem intolerant of Sonichu and Chris's stupid antics, as well as his character's unintentional homosexual undertones. Although he is clearly omnipotent and omniscient, Magi-chan refuses to use his powers for any reason other than to exposit plot points and teleport characters to where they need to be in order to do a job he could do himself in a matter of moments. Some readers find this to be his most redeeming characteristic, as he clearly only puts in the bare minimum effort to satisfy Chris with his whims. He also remained a girlfriend-free, the longest of all characters, and implied that he was uninterested in a romance due to having too much grey matter, when Sonichu obnoxiously boasts about his girlfriend. Even when Magi-chan does express interest in a woman, it's a woman with a pickle, Sylvana Rosechew. Since mid-2017, 2014, Chris has had the thought of Magi-chan as an imaginary friend hanging out with him in the real world, eclipsing even the original Sonichu in popularity. The idea guys injected themselves into Chris's life about this time, seized the chance to run with this as far as they could. New facts about Magi-chan, including his incestuous homosexual marriage, were introduced to Chris in this way through early 2018. In March of that year, psychologically distorted Chris declared that Magi-chan was his husband, as well as Mewtwo's. After the idea guys were removed from power, Magi-chan has become a key player in the dimensional merge and one of Chris's Twitter sock puppets. China. China is a sovereign state in East Asia. To Chris, however, it's a word he once used in place of vagina, as he was uncomfortable saying this word and felt the need to resort to using childish, similar sounding or slightly altered versions of the offending term. It's likely Chris based this term off a term for porcelain, China. Although Chris has not used this euphemism except ironically since 2008, it has become one of his most famous quickisms. PS3 Humping video. On the 24th of July 2009, a video of Chris humping his beloved PlayStation 3 was leaked onto 4cent garbage/V-board. In it, Chris makes love to his life upgrade for 8 minutes, although he can only stay standing for the first minute. What might first seem to be just an impressive display of fanboyism is actually a desperate plea for the return of his international PlayStation Network accounts, seemingly being held to ransom by the irrational expert hacker Jack Thaddeus. Chris himself sat in on an IRC chat where a crowd of trolls planned the making of the video, where he believed that he had effectively hidden his identity. Bits of Chris's monologue are simply repetitions of what he heard during the chat. In his wisdom, Thaddeus never returned the PlayStation account to this day. Thorg. Thorg, real name Jeremy Slonwhite, is a troll who gained notoriety in August 2011 when he was targeted by Chris through a series of blackmailed videos. Chris claimed he was responsible for exposing tomboys and tomgirls of Virginia in July 2011 and creating a slanderous billboard back in 2009. Thorg officially retired from trolling on the 21st of August 2011 after a mysterious video was uploaded by Chris, who celebrated accordingly. Idea Guys. The Idea Guys were a group of trolls who exploited Chris's escapist fantasies by role-playing as his imaginary friends. They used this influence to brainwash him, and it's alleged that they blackmailed Chris out of $6,000 by threatening to destroy his imaginary city of Quickville. The group began with Joshua Wise in October 2017, and at some point Stephen Boyd and at least 3 anonymous followers partnered with him until the group was ousted in April 2018. Initially, their aim was to see how gullible Chris was, but this soon fell into them taking advantage of him financially and coercing him into performing many degrading acts, some of which could put Blue Spike to shame. In the process, they managed to somehow make Chris become even more delusional than he already was, all the while planting some of their own twisted ideas into Chris's mind. This abuse prompted the creation of a group composed of the Captain, Marvin, and later Null, dubbed the Guard Dogs. Their goal was to work together to dismantle the Idea Guys' schemes and push for legal action to be taken against them. Thanks to their efforts, the Idea Guys' link to Chris was cut by late April 2018. Authorities never looked into the matter. Despite their removal, the Idea Guys' iron grip over Chris had lasting effects. To this day, Chris has retained many of the concepts they had coerced him into believing. Concepts such as changes to Sonichu canon, a polyamorous marriage, and the now infamous dimensional merge were introduced to Chris by the group. After their reign, waves of fantasy enablers began appearing, copying their tactics to get an audience with Chris, with many seeing success. The Idea Guys have effectively had the greatest impact on Chris's psyche and personal life outside of any trolls since the day of the Miscreants, and are debatedly the most successful trolls in that regard. Sonichu the Animated Series. Spaz Kids created Sonichu the Animated Series with friends. Having channels constantly flagged down on YouTube, he had to censor certain episodes of the cartoon and put the uncensored video files on Dailymotion. He ended the series once his interest in Chris dropped off, but the show's abandonment was also influenced by constant drama with voice actors and writers. In one episode of a podcast called Sleepycast, Spaz Kid revealed that another reason why he abruptly stopped the series was because he felt that Chris's life had become more depressing to the point where Spaz Kid started feeling bad for him, especially when he found out about Chris's tomgirl transformation and the death of Bob. Though he still thinks it's funny that Chris still freaks out about Sonic to this day. He mentions that he still gets tweets from die-hard fans asking him if he could bring back the series, but he wants them to let it die. Much like the comic series, though the title is Sonichu, this series centers around the misadventures of Chris. For 4 years it ran for 2 seasons, with the first season consisting of 10 episodes and the second having 1 episode split into 2 parts. The series mocks Chris by making him look like a bigger idiot than he already is, and with him always ending up in each episode being killed, injured, humiliated, or doing something stupid or disgusting. Unlike the comics, Chris rarely wins and is rightfully told off many times except by Sonichu, who loves and adores his father, maybe even a little too much. Encyclopedia Dramatica edits. Within days of the creation of the Christian article on Encyclopedia Dramatica, Chris was aware of the existence due to his frequent ego searches for himself and Sonichu. Chris obviously paid close attention to the page from the beginning, but he managed to resist the temptation to make his own changes to the article for nearly a week before plunging in with dozens of attempts to make himself look good on the page or convince Encyclopedia Dramatica to leave him alone. Ironically, virtually every embarrassing detail we know about Chris outside of his YouTube videos and Sonichu website was first presented to Encyclopedia Dramatica by himself in these edits. Chris's rationale was TMI input to overload their minds and stop believing that if he told the trolls details about how pathetic his life is, they would feel sorry for him or be too freaked out to do anything. Of course, being the internet, it only made the trolls want to troll him even more, and is comparable to a child telling his bullies not to beat him up because he still wets the bed. Chris was misdiagnosed. There is next to no information whatsoever on this entry, but I can assume it's referring to the fact that Chris may have been misdiagnosed with autism, which in of itself is a pretty stupid claim due to the fact that it has been proven several times over that Chris does indeed have autism. I even found a thread of Redditors clowning on OP for asking the same question. My Little Pony protests. The My Little Pony protests are a non-violent series of tweets, videos and other media with the intention of persuading Hasbro, the owners of the My Little Pony franchise, to continue producing 5 more seasons of their animated series, Friendship is Magic, instead of rebooting the franchise into its 5th generation, and as of late 2019, to cancel the spin-off series My Little Pony, Pony Life. Chris, of course, remains the only active participant since August 2018, being quite the big shot in C197. He has conveyed that the aims of the protests are a means of preserving his imaginary friends in Pony Realm of Equestria. Or simply put, to everyone else he refuses to accept that his favorite cartoon has concluded without his approval. Having become seasoned in campaigns, such as the Sonic Boom protest and hashtag #HarassQuick directly, the Hasbro protests are one of Chris's most out-of-touch ventures to date. Fortunately, in his own best interest, he's proceeding with the demonstrations in a more restrained manner compared to previous endeavors. Anna McLaren. Anna Elizabeth McLaren is a gal pal and white knight who met Chris through her job at the PacSun in Charlottesville Fashion Square. Chris was brought to her attention when during the Love Quest era, he started advertising himself in front of the store. This inspired her short story, The Tale of the Crazy Pacer, published in early 2005 on our blog. Soon after publishing the story, she befriended Chris. Chris made romantic advances towards her until she told him she was a Mormon and a lesbian. Chris refers to her as proof that he can be friends with homosexuals. In the summer of 2005, Chris helped to throw Anna a surprise party for her 20th birthday along with her other friends. Soon after this, Anna moved to Salt Lake City, Utah with her family. Since then, her relationship with Chris has been mostly long distance, although a picture of her with Barbara from August 2016 shows that she has visited the Chandlers on at least one occasion since then. Apparently, Chris did not learn that Anna was a lesbian until after her move, indicating that he still saw her as a potential girlfriend even when she was living across the country from him. Most people who observe Chris intensely dislike Anna, as she is not seen to be a genuine friend to Chris, sometimes even equating her to Barb in terms of making Chris worse, because like Barb, she has or at least had in the past considerable influence over Chris, but rarely used it to help him improve his life. Chris's observers know that the first time Chris ran afoul of the law, she made a joke about him getting RAPED'd in prison on a Facebook post. Not exactly what friends say in these situations. Moreover, after his house burned down while even the denizens of the Quickie forums were putting together a care package for Chris, Anna was nowhere to be seen, until she popped up one day on Chris's Facebook statuses to discuss irrelevant drama, and was promptly called out for not even pretending to care that her friend's house had burned to the ground. Even when she noticed that Chris was being extorted for thousands of dollars, she put off contacting the police for over a month until she finished her college finals, before refusing to help whatsoever, according to Null. It should also be noted that Anna was initially a troll of sorts, sharing her interactions with Chris on the Quickie forums, at one point hosting hosting a conference call with leading trolls wherein she primarily talked about herself and seemingly only turned to counter-trolling when she didn't get the adoration she'd anticipated from the trolling community. Despite her apparent apathy towards Chris or his problems, Anna is also known to lash out at people who threaten her privileged position by befriending Chris. Even Chris doesn't seem to deem her to be a friend anymore. As of 2015, he has been pinning for the return of his gal pals because he has no friends or social life, with no mention of Anna. In a letter dated 22nd of October 2021, Chris claimed that Anna was autistic. Quick Sonichu site. Quick Sonichu site, full title The Official and the Original from Kristen Weston Chandler, the Sonichu and Roaster site, was Chris's homepage for the Sonichu franchise. It existed in various incarnations from 2000 to August 2009 and was a regular target of hacking by trolls following Chris's discovery in 2007. Half a decade later, Chris's Facebook friends helped him make a new site, which was pretty much non-functional and error-ridden during its astonishing 10-day lifespan. Sonichu possessions. Spirit possessions is the belief that spirits can possess a person's body. Chris believes he has experienced possessions by his imaginary friends. He has increasingly used it as a maladaptive coping mechanism to avoid reality and criticism, such as when he began to roleplay as Sonichu as part of an elaborate fantasy to cope with being unable to attend the real-world BabsCon, or when he roleplayed as Mewtwo to defend himself from criticism levied by a Twitter troll. This practice has been colloquially referred to as LARPing, short for live-action role-playing after the real-life practice. When Chris believes he has swapped spirits with an imaginary friend, he roleplays as that persona. While doing so, Chris refers to himself in third person. In calls and videos, he tries to change his voice and vocabulary, but usually fails. In a later video, he made the excuse that when you possess somebody else's body, you gotta work with their vocabulary and their limitations and whatever. He sometimes changes the profile picture and the name of his social media account to match the OC he is possessed by. Chris appears to have forgotten he can do this on Twitter, forcing him to preface his tweets with Sonichu : to remind followers of the roleplay. He also changes his signature on occasional drawings to match the OC's name. This behavior was unseen from Chris until the Idea Guys, Troon Squad, and various other enablers roleplayed as characters from Quickville to bend Chris into their will. After their removal, Chris retained the idea of roleplaying by saying his OC is a manifesting in Dimension 1218, which is the real world, through his body for various reasons. Chris has channeled the spirits or been possessed by Sonichu, Uzumi Tenobishi, Magichan, Tri, Mewtwo, Jesus Christ, Robochu, Chris from Dimension 1214, and a younger Chris. Ghost hunting video. On the 22nd of March 2019, Copids, along with two of his friends, went to visit Chris again. During this time, they went ghost hunting in the now abandoned DeGeronet Center for Human Development in Stoughton, Virginia. The video itself is pretty tame due to the fact that Chris acts relatively normal compared to how he usually is. The most notable thing Chris does is try to light up two pieces of quartz by rubbing them together as if they were flint. Sonichu 11. Sonichu 11 is the 12th comic in the Sonichu comics series, dated 13th of August 2009. The cover claims to be the 12th anniversary issue, although Chris abandoned the issue in December 2009, months before the 10th anniversary of Sonichu's creation came and went on the 17th of March 2010. For years it seemed that Chris was done with Sonichu forever. However, on the 4th of September 2015, in an unprecedented act of will and determination, Chris managed to crawl back from his long night of abuse at the hands of the trolls and cyberbullies and finally released new pages. The revival of the Sonichu comic proved too stressful for Chris, even though he had been paid over $1,000 to do it, and he dropped the project once again. 2 years later, on May 8, 2017, Chris began work on the comic once again and finished it on the 30th of June. Financial crisis. The financial crisis is a term coined by users from Kiwi Farms to describe the steep decline in the Chandler family's financial management beginning in early 2016. Signs of the Chandler's worsening finances were apparent by the increasing amounts of begging videos and donation requests on YouTube and Facebook. In June 2017, Chris began to take his Patreon account more seriously and recommenced drawing Sonichu comic pages. He's gotten several hundreds of dollars per month for his efforts, payments which continued until August 2021. As a result, begging had temporarily subsided. In mid-2018, however, begging resumed due to an alleged extortion plot by the Idea Guys, which involved threatening to destroy Chris's imaginary land of Quickville if he did not pay them. It is claimed by the Guard Dog group that Chris paid the Idea Guys around $6,000 in the form of gift cards and video game accessories. Chris and Barbo left on the brink of foreclosure, and Chris repeatedly claimed to need assistance with buying enough food for his family. Chris stopped caring about the financial crisis by 2019 because of the dimensional merge and the generous backing from Ali Hirschberg and other financial enablers. Chris continues to beg, but only for conventions diamonds, toys, and video games. Chris now also believes that he has vast wealth in Quickville, Dimension C197, to pay off the creditors, but creditors do not buy into fictional worlds and have managed to sue him for at least $11,606. Chris has access to Barb's online bank account and knows how to transfer her money into his own account. During the incest saga Fallout, he admitted taking $750 from Barb's account to fund a hotel room for himself. Given that Barb is elderly on a fixed income and Chris is lazy on a fixed income, it is unsurprising that many followers worry that the death of Barb could lead to the so-called homeless saga, a wet dream from A-loggers and weens, but devastating for both Chris and many of his followers. Owing to Chris's arrest on incest charges, his Patreon has been terminated, although financial enablers continue to send money to his jail inmate account. Custom cards. Chris has made custom playing cards of the following games: Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Sailor Moon, The Eye of Judgment, Ultimate Fighting System, Twilight Sparkle Secret Chip Folder, Magic the Gathering, and Tarot. Just to put into perspective how dedicated Chris was to making custom cards, he has made so many custom cards that he has a wall of originals. A wall composed of a total of 122 custom-made, although not very original, Pokemon cards. Quixsicle. Quixsicle is the name of a video log entailing Chris sticking his duck into the snow for 15 minutes. Trolls told him to make it as part of the Jackass 3D prank contest, in which the person who submits the best prank will get to appear in the Jackass 3D movie. Needless to say, Chris did not win, as he violated both the rules and common sense. Most Jackass-style pranks are quite dangerous, so sending video footage as opposed to plans or sketches wasn't allowed. Chris also claims that it is impossible to change the onboard clock on one's cell phone. This is obviously untrue, but Chris may have had automatic update of date and time on the Motorola W315 and was too dim to know that it can be turned off. He may have feigned ignorance about this in order to lie about the duration for which he performed this act of complete idiocy. Lori Lopez. Lori Lopez is a non-existent boyfriend-free girl whom Joshua Martinez created in order to troll Chris. In an email to Anna on the 5th of November 2007, Chris revealed to Lori for the first time: Joshua found a gal who was interested in me after reading about me in my MySpace profile at last. Her name is Lori Lopez. I chatted with her through AOL Instant Messenger last night. She was really sweet, and not only did I have a great time getting to know her, but blush I got turned on. I know that she works at a car lot, I think. She is 23, brunette, brown eyes, and she's a mix of American and Spanish. If you watch the movie Into the Blue, the starring woman, Jessica Alba, is an American-Spanish mix as well. I'm keeping the sweetheart search details on my profile until I know for certain that Lori is really to be my sweetheart. Smiley face. Crystal Chandler. Crystal Weston Chandler is the fictional twin sister of Christine Weston Chandler. Her role in his fantasy world stems from his long-held desire to have siblings to play with, along with some narcissistic pleasure and gender identity issues with seeing himself as an attractive female. Crystal represents one of the more embarrassing facets of Chris's mind, since his notions of the perfect girlfriend, the perfect sister, the perfect daughter, and the perfect female self so easily intersect. It is hard not to arrive at a conclusion involving incest. He appears to have first created the character in 2004 as Crystal the female twin for a set of custom Yu-Gi-Oh cards, although another of those cards depicts Crystal as girlfriend's gift. In fiction, Crystal wears a Rose-True medallion correlating to Chris's Sonichu medallion and Relnak's Black Sonichu medallion. This is inconsistent with Chris's usual theme of Sonichu, Rose-True, and Blake representing the hero, lover, and villain. In real life, Chris created the Rose-True medallion for his future girlfriend, which raises the question of how he expects to adapt this into the comics when his sister was running around wearing the same bauble as his fiancée. Crystal's origin is depicted in sub-episode 5, where she is manifested into reality by Chris employing his ancient powers and Heart Torch of Phil to split into nearly two identical beings. Chris and Crystal wear the same outfit and even have the same superpowers, although she lacks her brother's heterochromia. Though her appearances in the comics, characters are constantly noting how attractive she is, and by extension how Chris is. Warhol Christian. Warhol Christian, subtitled The Lifespan of American Pop Culture or The Suppression of Reality, is a self-published fan book by Don Lachaume, which subjectively compares the output of Chris with the renowned modern artist Andy Warhol. The book was published via Amazon on the 12th of May 2021. Chris took an interest upon discovering the book a few days later, getting an ego boost out of being compared to someone famous in extensive detail. However, he still criticized the book book over Twitter, taking issues with the book's focus on his sex life and sexually explicit art. He purchased a copy of it and made his own cover for it, as he didn't have to feel bored in with looking at a pickle. Said pickle is a reference to the Warhol design cover art for the Velvet Underground's debut album, The Velvet Underground and Nico. Upon browsing the book's disclaimer chapter, Chris commented about the nitpick with its content, insisting that his delusions were real. Aside from it, he mentioned liking the book so far and thanked the author, giving it a glowing 5-star review. On the 27th of May, Chris recorded a cover of I'll Be Your Mirror by Velvet Underground and Nico to promote the book. On the 1st of June 2021, while reading chapter 5 of the book, Chris briefly roleplayed as his younger pre-named change self over Twitter in order to check in with his inner child and search for issues to address. In the 13th of July 2021 tweet, Chris stated that he would distribute approximately 24 book jackets that he made for the book while at the Everfree Northwest My Little Pony convention to those who showed they had purchased a copy. He also stated that he would be willing to autograph any copy of the book that was brought to him. On the 1st of August 2021, in the wake of Chris's admission of incest with his mother, Lacham made a public statement distancing himself from Chris and announcing that he would stop promoting the book. According to the Incest Fallout chat leaks, Chris gave Lacham subtle hints about his questionable relationship with the mother in early July, but Lacham, like Null, apparently didn't put the pieces together. Despite Lacham cutting ties with Chris, the book was briefly promoted again on Prater's Etsy page with Chris's permission. And this is end of part 2 of the iceberg. If you want to see part 3, make sure to subscribe and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. And with that said, goodbye.